Weekend edition of the call up here. We're talking breakout prospects because we got to get this episode out before these guys start to break out. I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. We're going to break this into two halves where first half of the episode, we're talking breakout hitting prospects. And then second half of the episode, we're talking breakout hitters. I'm going to get into the criteria real quick before I kick it to you, Jack. A couple of things that we wanted to do to make sure that they're truly breakouts and at least have some sort of parameters to this. They can't be an international free agent who signed for more than $3 million because at that point, again, I think people they're on the radar and it's just, are they getting to where people were hoping they'd be? Same thing with a first round pick. Can't be a first round pick. Generally, those will be the same thing because if you are a first round pick, you probably would have signed for 3 or close to it. But we wanted to pretty much just say if you were in the top 30 picks or if you were a $3 million or more international free agent, we don't want to consider you on this list. There's a couple guys that we have high on the top 100 list that you could argue could pick out based on the public perception, but we still also like a Josue de Paula. We're not counting that either because he's 33 on our top 100 list. We'll give him plenty of airtime elsewhere.
Yes. Another thing, just to attach names, we were just talking before we hit record, like there are guys that had good years last year that we think are going to break out to an even higher degree. And two catchers came to mind, Dominic Keegan with the Tampa Bay Rays, Tyrone Lorenzo with the Dodgers. And you made a good point. I was like, you took Lorenzo off and you were like, dude, he hit 25 homers as like a teenager in full season ball. So you just have to be okay with it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I think he's going to put himself on a consensus top 100 type trajectory, but he broke out last year. Like it's just kind of building and showing what he can do again. Same with Dominic Keegan. It's like, he broke out last year, but he's going to show what he can do again. These guys we think are ones that are going to jump onto everybody's prospect map.
Yeah. And the two players you use there, like I think they're a perfect example of, yeah, they broke out offensively. And now this coming year, it's kind of shoring up who you are as a prospect and solidifying yourself as a legitimate big league prospect. And I think both of those guys are going to do that. So for us, they're, breaking out into another echelon, but in terms of the breakout definition coming from kind of nowhere, or at least somewhere where people are looking at you lesser in terms of your abilities, then being able to break through that. I think Keegan and Lorenzo showed that they have that ability to be, a really, really good player, but now they need to show that they can defend and that they can hit some upper level pitching and things like that. That'll solidify them as top 100 guys. But as you mentioned, the breakout already happened. Before we jump into it too, I have one other question because there's one player that I'm curious how we don't have him on the list. If this would fit the qualifications, I would say no, because he already broke out, but he's 2 years removed from the breakout. Addison Barger's a guy I would love to throw into this because of the down year last year, but he broke out in 2022. So you can't break out twice. You're already out. Even if you kind of crawled back into the hole, like Barger's a guy I would love to put in this conversation because I think he's going to have a huge year this year in AAA. But again, it's probably not really a breakout for an Addison Barger.
I mean, if you're putting Barger in, I think that would open the conversation to a guy like Zach Veen, even where it's like Veen was so clearly
it's bounce back.
Yeah, it's a bounce back thing. And Barger bounced back at the end of last year. And you think that this guy's going to have his debut under his belt. Veen is like, he was good, and then he was really bad, and we'll see if he can get good again. So that is a bounce back candidate. I think Barger and Veen fall into the Brady House bucket too, where House, I mean, that guy fell off every top 100, then he made his way back. It's the Nick York thing too. So I do think those are separate conversations than a true breakout because they already had credentials attached to them.
And I think early in the season, we'll do like a buy or sell bounce backs if guys are playing well, in the early part of this season, and contextualize those things too, which I'm looking forward to doing. But let's jump into the hitters, and we'll start with a couple names that you've been hearing plenty of, but we might as well get them out of the way because we tease them as guys that we'd be talking about as breakout prospects. And Braylin Tavera of the Baltimore Orioles has to be the first guy we talk about, right? I think that's got to be, for my money, if not my favorite, one of my favorite breakout guys this year. He did sign for $1.7 million in 2022, so a little bit on the higher side of international free agent signings of the breakout guys we're going to talk about, but we ranked him pretty high in a talented Orioles system because of the projection. We saw him at the Futures game, or not the Futures game. We saw him at the Spring Breakout game, and he's a lot bigger than whatever those measurables were that we got for him. He's a big dude now. but he made some swing adjustments between the DSL and the complex, which would have been DSL in 2022 right after signing, complex in 2023, that I think really allowed him to stay in the zone longer. He was in and out of the zone a little bit spinny before, staying in the zone longer now, and pairing improved contact rates with just physical strength and just adding and growing, to your frame. I mean, what else do you want to see? Like, that screams breakout, right? You have a guy that put up good numbers in the complex with a tangible swing adjustment preceding that, physically becomes, more imposing, and now is getting ready to go right into low A after, a really strong finish to his complex season. I think Tavera is just poised for a big year, and I think we'll be climbing up the prospect ranks quickly.
Yeah, I think the situation is also conducive to a breakout. It feels like he is in the right incubator when it comes to time. And like, we're not talking about a guy that balled out at the DSL and it's like, oh, when he gets going in mid to late June at the complex, he's going to be awesome for 30 games. No, like, he's already performed at both complexes. He's going to jump into full season ball. Those are the guys that I feel like are kind of in the wheelhouse for a breakout pick.
Mhm.
Someone that is so good at the complex that you think is going to be validated by what they do in full season ball, because really, and like, I'm victim of it too, because I don't have any information from the complex. Like, all I see at the complex is the line score, what you've
Mhm.
done. The only complex information that I get on these guys is baseball reference or fan graphs, and that's it. Once we get to full season ball and you get to watch them on an MILB TV feed and you get to, talk to people that are seeing them and, who cares, Missouri or like wherever, Florida, that's when you really get a good feel of who that guy could be as a prospect.
Absolutely. And then just being able to see him in person, we didn't get to see him do too much, but were you not surprised at how well he moved in center field for how big he is? Made
He
two
moved
like grabs going straight back over his head.
he moved really well. He moved like he was a young guy that's big. Like, I
Yep.
like the young guys that are big, and we'll see how it looks when he's 30, but he's a decade away from 30.
Yeah, more. He's 19, he
Yeah.
just turned 19. The last thing on him is we talk about these lower level prospects. It's you got to take a lot of the DSL and complex numbers with a grain of salt, but swing decisions are always going to, I think are one of the best predictors of how guys are going to make that transition into low A. And in Tavera, very patient, good swing decisions, good feel for the zone. You pair all those things together, and I think you got a guy that's going to have a nice year and fit that breakout mold. Next up is Cole Carrigg, switch hitting outfielder, Colorado Rockies. He can also play shortstop. So that part's really fun. Can play a good center field, can play a good shortstop. He is the definition of a dynamic athlete. I really, when we talked about him with the Rocky system, when we went through that, really like the improvements and the adjustments he's made in the box. This was a guy that I think just was pretty much relying on athleticism in college and just sheer feel for the barrel, kind of just up there, throwing his hands at the ball and going. And since he went pro, made some adjustment to his setup. He's more vertical now, but sinks into his backside is kind of Alex Verdugo-esque. And I think that's allowed him to really engage his lower half more. Of course, he already had the feel to hit. So the feel for the barrels, that's kind of an innate thing for a lot of guys. It's harder to learn that. So he has that, but now he's engaging his lower half more. And all of a sudden, professional baseball, we actually see him hitting the ball harder than he was with metal at San Diego State. So that, another tangible swing adjustment that is leading to more power and just a better all around path, which I think is huge. Maintaining his direction a lot more because, again, he was just relying on athleticism. And when he would try to let it eat a little bit more, he got really rotated and would tend to pull off of the ball. So now he's driving the ball in the air a little bit more. He's hitting the ball harder. And I've really liked what I've seen from him on the backfields, including a home run from the right side off of Justin Steele that he got. Like he looks good. And I think he's going to continue to look good. And I think it's going to be a really big year for him.
And he passes the eye test. He looks like a really good athlete and he looks sturdy and strong. Um, I love the point that you bring up about the EV bump, because for the first time in his amateur or professional career, he looks like he could have some juice and like legitimate home run
Mhm.
juice. In college, 133 games, 7 homers. In the minor leagues, and I know 2 of them came at the complex and then he goes to a hitter friendly environment, but 36 games, 5 homers. I don't care what environment you're in right now. If you go from 7 and 133 games to 5 and 36 games, there's a power adjustment there.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you. I think that's the perfect way to contextualize it. And then you can also contextualize it with data. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a tangible swing adjustment that clearly like implies more power. Like even if I didn't see the results, I'd be like, okay, that looks good. That's gonna hopefully, translate into more power. And then that's followed by new max EVs with wood and pro ball. So it doesn't even matter about like the environment, which I'm glad you brought it up because it's like, yeah, but he never hit a ball 109 miles an hour before that with metal at any point, I don't think. So now doing that with wood for a home run and multiple times, it's like, okay, and there might be even more in there. Like he's still filling out the athleticism. I think he's going to steal some bags. Look, is he going to hit 30? No, but I think he can hit now like 15 home runs. The field of hits impressive. He's going to rein in the approach a little bit, and that's one of the questions. But I just think he's going to be a guy that impacts the game across the board. He's going to make some highlight reel plays. He's got a great arm. He's just a fun prospect that, I mean, splitting time in his pro debut between shortstop and center field enough is just super fun. So even if the offensive numbers aren't as gaudy as some of the other names we're going to talk about here, when you have that the profile of, oh, he's playing a good short, he's playing a good center field, he's fast, he's a switch hitter, he's doing all these things, I think he's just going to really climb in terms of his perception in the industry as well.
I mean,
number 3, or the third guy we're talking about here, now it's not in any particular order.
Yeah.
Walker Martin, shortstop in the Giants system. Have you been able to, did you catch any of like the clips that like the Giants like prospects like Twitter account put out of Walker Martin? Because I know like looks have not been very available considering that he's a Colorado prep prospect and then didn't make his pro debut last year.
Yeah, I saw the draft clips. Like that's all I saw. And the draft clips, I take next to nothing from the draft clips unless you are Tamar Johnson and you're doing this at a perfect game home run derby, that kind of thing. Like I need the high def footage to take anything away from you. And I saw him taking ground balls for the mountains in the background and it looked really pretty. Awesome. Hooray. But yeah, I know next to nothing about this guy. All I know is that you're high on him.
Yeah, so being able to get looks at some of the high school video from like all different angles, it was the area code games where he really stood out. And I genuinely believe this guy played baseball, he's high school baseball in Florida, Texas, California. He's a slam dunk first round pick. Ends up sliding the second round because Colorado doesn't tend to produce a ton of talent. And he was a helium guy with his performance at the area code games. When you look at the swing, it's one of those that, you can understand, like when we talk about Padres prospects, guys that they always like nail because the swing's so advanced for a high school guy and you can dream on more power. Like Walker Martin is exactly that. And I think when you can consider it from that lens, like, wow, this is a guy from Colorado who went straight to the area code games and handled some of the best arms out there. And you look at a swing that is super simple in terms of his moves. He seems to have a really good feel for his body and already well above average bat speed from the left side. And then you consider that he tested at like the top of the scale of like every athlete test that they did ahead of the draft. So he's explosive as well, has a chance to stick it short. I like everything from what I've seen. I don't have much data to contextualize, but in terms of just the visuals, I'm buying in on that swing. And then you get the context of just some of the athleticism that we heard going into the draft and after the draft. And then some of the things I've seen from his just limited looks on the backfield so far. It's a smooth swing to all fields. And I think he's going to keep growing into more power. And I think you could have an elusive combination here of above average hit, above average power, and above average speed and athleticism that he's top of my list of guys I am eager to see this year, just because of what we haven't seen and because of the snippets of what we have seen.
Yeah. I'll always buy a high school quarterback that plays shortstop. I'll buy a lot of high school quarterbacks that pitch. But shortstop is a unique one because I'm like, oh, classic dual threat quarterback that like just happens to be the best athlete at the school. And he's going to be the starting shortstop on the varsity team too. So I'll buy the athleticism there. My question is, how is this cat 20 years old when he was a high school draft pick?
That was another reason why he got knocked. Oldest guy in the draft class. So, or like oldest prep guy in the draft class.
Was Aiden Miller the youngest guy or the oldest guy?
I think Aiden Miller was also older. So maybe Aiden Miller had him slightly edged out as older. I know that Walker Martin was one of the oldest.
No, Aiden Miller was born June 9th, 2004. Walker Martin was born February 20th, 2004. So he's like 4 months older than Aiden Miller.
Yeah. So like, and there's a lot of draft models that like reject that, like for
Old
whatever
guys?
reason, the data shows like if you're
Because
6,
he's a
7 months
senior
older.
citizen?
Yeah. I don't know why, but the draft, like history has kind of shown that the guys that are 6 months older or 5 months older out of high school on their draft day, like just tend not to translate as well. I think mostly because historically they were just feasting on some lesser competition. I think the talent gap has narrowed so much now to where, like, if you're performing, especially in these area code games and things like that, who cares if he's 19 in 5 months or 18 in 7 months? Like, I think that was something that was more prevalent years ago. I don't think that's as prevalent now. And I think that's why the Giants may have got a really good piece here. In terms of like swing and just moves and stuff, it's rare to find a guy this controlled with his body. Like the load into the backside, it's a slight coil, it's minimal movement, and then it's explosion. I think he already popped a couple like 106s, 107s. He may have even popped a 108 on the backfields already this spring. So, I mean, I'm pumped to see what he can do, and we'll see how big of a leap it is for him now after not playing at all last year after the draft. Next up, Ramon Ramirez. We don't need to spend too much time on him because we just talked about him in the top 100 prospects episode. Kansas City Royals catching prospect. I'm all the way in. I think I've made that abundantly clear. I know I've sold you on Ramirez. It's above average across the board potentially here with the defensive ability. I think above average field to hit, above average power potential. You talked about it when we went through his prospect profile in the first episode of 100 to 86, that he looks like a fire hydrant, but like in an athletic way. And it's like that modern athletic, explosive, but still agile catcher. And every time I check in on this guy, anytime I get an opportunity to get a look, it's some scary bat speed and some power that I think is going to continue to grow. He's going to have a big year. I feel really good about that.
This Royals organization is not good. Or this Royals farm system right now is not good. I mean, Ramirez is the only one that's moderately close to the top 100. They need him to be really good, really badly. And I think they have a guy that's going to succeed this year.
Yeah. And I think they know what they've got here too. He's 18 and he's already going to be, over in the complex league this year. And I think we're going to see him in low A by the time the complex league is over. He walks more than he struck out last year in the DSL. And again, we take DSL stats with a grain of salt, but when you have a guy that's impacting the ball, harder than most of his peers and is producing higher contact rates than most of his peers, and he's walking more than he struck out, and then we get a chance to see him, over on the backfields at the end of last year, and just some of the looks I got there were really impressive. Like he was handling upper 90s velo because you kind of get a mixed bag out there in some of these scrimmages that they have on the backfields. He looked comfortable no matter who was opposite of him. I think this is going to be a combination of polish and already present tools that's going to allow Ramirez to, I think, pace the complex, or at least be really close to it. And he's going to be that new, I think, excitable, like everybody jumps on the bandwagon guy this year. I think Ramirez is like that, just fits the mold, but I think he's actually going to back it up.
Amen.
Next up, Zyhir Hope, now a Dodgers prospect. I have really enjoyed getting any additional looks I've been able to get at Zyhir Hope. And when he was moved, because he was traded alongside Jackson Ferris in that Michael Bush deal that also sent Yency Almonte the other way, I immediately was like, okay, I know what the Dodgers are targeting here. I mean, they know he's far away, but they probably saw enough. They probably liked him in the draft cycle to say, okay, we can maybe have a major upside piece here. And we saw it in a brief snippet. What round was he selected again, Jack? Was it the over slot in the 11th or 12th?
It might have been the 11th. That's when you can really start paying guys because it doesn't factor into your bonus pool. 11th round. Yeah.
Yep. So this is a guy that obviously flies under the radar because of that, but Cubs do a really good job of signing him and identifying a guy that could be signable there. There was some swing and miss in the very brief, cameo that we saw at, professionally, but he also impacted the ball like hard. Like there was some impressive EVs. I think he's already flashed over 110.
He had 3
And
homers in 11 games.
Yeah, and the swing is good. It is a good, like, powerful, good path from the left side. He's got to just find a little bit more consistency with his lower half, like can get, a little bit forward early, resulting in some more ground balls. But when he elevates, he crushes baseballs, man. So I see potentially plus power here. He's compact, but like explosive in terms of like his physical build. And he may move to a corner, but right now he's kind of playing all three. I think you get a left-handed power bat here. Another guy that does seem to have a good feel for the zone. And I love that the Dodgers targeted him and he's in that organization. I already thought he was arguably one of the most underrated guys in the Cubs system. He could be a guy that really bursts onto the scene this year with the sweet swing from the left side. You're going to see some clips and people are just going to buy right in because when everything's on time and he connects, it looks real nice.
Love it.
Next up, Alfonsin Rosario. This has got to be the deepest cut we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
Rosario of the Cubs, 6th round pick that I think was really put himself on the radar, on draft radars with his just power. I think some of these showcases really displayed that. But I think there were some concerns about the hit tool and I think some signability questions. Cubs, again, identify, sign, and get him. This was one of those guys where I went into the backfields, no idea, no idea who he was when I was going in there. I wasn't there looking for Alfonsin Rosario. And then you watch him get one swing off and you're like, whoa, who's that? And then you start dialing in and watching. And then next time I come, I'm starting to try to watch a little bit more. Now I'm looking for Alfonsin Rosario. He made some subtle changes to his swing as well, or at least his pre-swing moves to where now he does that like that toe tap, but it's like the early load where you step in and then you go from there. I think we were talking about somebody else that did that and it really helped them see the ball earlier. As long as you can hold your back hip, which is hard to do when it's an early step and then you stride because, you're holding it for even longer, but guys that can do that, are able to see the ball. We talked about it with Jung-Hoo Lee. He does it abnormally early. And that allowed him to see the ball early and hit it that way. It seems to be exactly what works for Rosario when he does hold the back hip well. He's had really impressive. I think it's elite bat speed. At least it's plus bat speed. And that was what I think got him drafted. But now he's more under control. Now he's seeing the ball earlier and he's quieter and he's still delivering the same kind of EVs. I saw him pop several exit velocities over 110 on the backfield. So if he's doing that and he has potentially speed to stick in center field, this guy was a 6th round pick that nobody really was paying attention to. Popping exit velocities over 110, like with semi-regularity now. This guy could be a monster this year. I don't know if he's going to hit enough. It's a big question. There's a deep cut here, but I think there's a chance for him to be a big time, who the hell is that type of dude that is going to start to play his way under radars.
I like your discovery of him because it was very Cam Newton at Blinn Junior College. Do you remember the story? It's like Auburn saw Cam Newton. Obviously, he was at Florida before that, but Auburn went on a recruiting trip to Blinn Junior College to go see like a wide receiver. And it was like, oh, wait, it's the quarterback. And then they grabbed Cam Newton. I feel like that was you watching the backfield footage. It's like, oh, I hope to see, Jefferson Rojas or somebody like that. I hope to see other complex guys. It's like, who is this? I want him instead.
I mean, that's what's so fun about just roaming the backfields is like, you don't know what you're going to run into some days. Like, I feel like I know most of the guys that I'm going to want to see and who are relevant, but there's so much talent in these systems that sometimes you just stumble across somebody that you now can be really excited about. We'll see if there's enough bat to ball there, but from what I've seen, it looks much improved with the adjusted moves. And, with just starting it earlier and giving yourself a chance. He's 19 years old and already producing, plus EVs. I'd say for his age, plus. This is just a guy that I want to see what it looks like in a large sample in games. So I'm looking forward to that. Real quick, another Cub guy, Jefferson Rojas. We've talked about him a ton. It's just what he did in low A, super, super impressive for a guy that, was 18 years old. And it's above average tools across the board, above average hit, potential for above average power, can stay at shortstop. it's just hard to doubt this guy at this point. And he had a good year, but I think he's gonna have a great year now in high A.
I think same deal with the next guy too, and these are two guys that we've talked about in the top 100 the last couple episodes. But Rojas and Kevin Mcgonigle, two guys that we've kind of dove into. If you had to like kind of pin both against each other, because I do think that they'll be at pretty comparable levels, right? Like
Yeah.
Rojas will probably be in high A. Mcgonigle, I would assume, starts in low A, but quickly jumps to high A. Who do you think has like the better year when you account for everything?
Everything. So the thing is, I think Rojas is going to hit for more power, but I feel so confident that Mcgonigle is just going to be a batting average and an on base machine and slug enough. I had to pick one. I'm gonna go on the riskier side, but because of what I just saw in spring training and how absurdly just more polished, how polished he looked now too. Because Mcgonigle's edge was the polish, and it still is. But Rojas looked like he really built on last year, and seems like he's got a lot of momentum.
In the polish department, if he cuts that gap in the polish department, I'm with you. Like you just go with a guy that has better tools,
and that's why I'm going to go with Rojas. But I think Mcgonigle is going to just be so solid this year.
Yeah.
I guess to even just add a little bit more on Mcgonigle, I think the power is going to get docked more than it should because he's going to be playing in the Florida State League. I'm not saying he's going to hit for a ton of power, but he's going to feast out there batting average wise. He's going to utilize those gaps. He is one of those guys that can actually spray the ball kind of where he wants it. We talk about how like Arias surveys the field and nobody else does that because there's no point. You can't control where the ball goes. I'm not saying Mcgonigle's Arias, but he is the kind of guy that, there's a huge gap in left center. I can shoot it that way. And I think he's going to take advantage of that and just give you a lot of singles and doubles. But as he grows a little bit more and gets into some more friendly environments, I do think that he can mix in average power. So I think the mega breakout, it may not come until he leaves the Florida State League.
Got you.
Couple more. Yophery Rodriguez, Milwaukee Brewers, just missed the top 100. We talked about him in the Brewers system. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he has a lot of offensive upside, some explosive, I think explosive lower half in terms of just what he's able to generate there, the way he's able to be adjustable too. I mean, even his B swings, he's able to stay in his base and get some good swings off. The approach is good. There's some things that he could improve a bit with his path. I think he can get a little too lofty at times, and you combine that with just being, I think, a little pull side damage oriented. When he's at his best, he's trying to use the whole field. I think sometimes when I saw him, even in the early parts of this year, like just trying to do too much, which I get. You come stateside, you want to do the most, especially after everything you did last year. But with the feel to hit, with the power potential, with the approach, and just the athleticism in the box, Yophery could be really scary this year.
It seems like it. So do you think that and the Brewers, they've kind of done it with a lot of young guys where they push Chourio very quickly. And obviously he's in the big leagues now. He was born in 2004. That is the story in Major League Baseball on Friday as we record. Luis Lara is a guy that has been very much so pushed. I mean, you could even argue that Jefferson Carroll was a guy that has been very much so pushed. So we, I guess, knock the Padres for doing it sometimes because they get very like aggressive with it. But I think we're starting to see the Brewers and the Mariners kind of follow suit where they'll push guys if they feel like they'll be comfortable enough. Do you feel like this is a guy cut from the Chourio, Lara, Carroll cloth where he can be pushed and survive?
Yeah, I don't know if he's as good as, Carroll and Chourio, of course, but to your point of like the more advanced swing, more advanced approach. I think for Carrot it was more swing than approach, and same with Chourio. But just being more advanced as a hitter, I think he will be that next guy that can kind of handle those aggressive assignments. I don't know if he handles it as well as those guys, but I think he'll handle it well enough to where he is kind of that breakout guy, getting an aggressive assignment and performing pretty well. I do think he's the latest example of that, though. I agree.
And if he handles it, like Luis Lara handled it, he didn't handle it as well as Chourio and Carroll, but he handled it, and that's why he's a top 100 prospect. And the essence
Yep.
of Breakout is you're not on the top 100. You're a young guy. You get onto the top 100 because of what you do in 2024.
Absolutely. That, or you just put up silly numbers that were way
Right.
different relative to what you did before. I think either of those are ways that you can quantify a breakout, but I do think he is that latest Brewers prospect, and they seem to be just doing a great job of identifying those prospects that can do that. The guys that, can be challenged a bit more and be pushed a bit more quickly.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Yoeilin Cespedes of the Red Sox, he's probably another one of those guys that can do that. And I don't think he's the one guy that I actually forgot to check. I'm almost positive, though, he was not a $3 million bonus guy, right? He had to be less than that. $1.4 million. Okay. I just wanted to double check. That was the one that I almost could have talked myself into, wait a second. But okay, 1.4 million for Cespedes, but no relation to Yoenis. That said, he's very talented. Field to hit is really impressive. And I think that's what helped him put together just ridiculous numbers at the DSL this past season, where, he was 17 at that level. He's very aggressive, but I think it's the classic example of very aggressive because he hits everything. That is something that I think he is going to need to rein in more, especially at the complex. But you have a guy that produces some sneaky EVs, has a really good field to hit that could turn into a plus hit tool, and just seems to have a knack for the game. It seems to come a little bit easier to him. And that's why I just think Cespedes is just going to hit his way through the complex and stand out there.
Are you worried about the lack of patience? It's very, very, very aggressive.
A little bit, but it did get better as the season progressed. So that part is encouraging. This was a 17-year-old getting his first, professional taste. And again, he was performing so well that it's hard to tell that guy to swing less. But I think he started to understand that down the stretch, cut the chase rate over his final 20 games by about 8%. And I think that's something that definitely bodes well. I think the other thing that bodes well is, you're going to see a lot of fastballs at the complex, and he hit 370 against fastballs in the DSL. So we'll see how he performs against breaking balls and stuff like that. That'll be important to monitor. At the DSL, he performed pretty well against them, but they're generally not good breaking balls there. But the fact that he can crush fastballs, I think, really elevates his floor when he tries to make that transition to the complex. I don't know if he's going to light it up as much as some of these other guys, but I just feel like he's going to keep producing and become a name that everybody's monitoring.
Got you.
Another name, guy we saw, we got two more here, guy we saw at the spring breakout game, and a guy that I just think does it all across the board. Colton Ledbetter, outfielder with the Rays, second round pick. I thought should have been a late first, or at least a competitive balance pick. Everything I've been able to see of him too, from the footage and just being able to get live looks at what we saw this spring, and then also going back to the end of last year, and then what he did in college at Mississippi State. It's 50s to 55s across the board, and then a good approach, and just this knack for hitting as well, in terms of just using the whole field, letting it eat in his leverage counts, having the adjustability and athleticism to where when he's fooled and out on the front foot can still drive a ball. I saw him pick up plenty of hits in his pro debut doing that. But then when he's ahead in the count, crushing some pull side over 110 miles an hour. I just think this guy, I think there's a legitimate chance Ledbetter has a better season this year than Braylin Taylor. I do.
He's more dynamic than Braylin Taylor. I think that's abundantly clear. He's a high efficiency base stealer. Last year at Mississippi State, 53 games, he was 17 for 18 in the stolen base department. The thing that jumps out to me about Ledbetter is he passes the get off the bus test, but it's also, he's not a quote unquote big guy, but he hits the ball like a big guy. He's got a lot of impact that you may not expect just from seeing him in the box. He looks sound. It's almost, and their games are different because this guy that I'm about to compare him to has a ton of swing and miss, but way more speed. But it's almost like Mason Auer, where Auer is a guy that is built well, but not big, but he hits the ball really hard. That's kind of how I see Ledbetter, where it's, really athletic. And in that 2-0 count, like you're saying, he can pop like a 107, 108. I don't know what his max is, but it feels like he can get into a 107, 108, and it one hops the wall in right center, and all of a sudden he's at second base.
Yeah, to the pull side, he'll surprise you with some juice. I mean, with Metal, he was putting up, I think, 113, 114, but in his brief pro debut, multiple 110s. So, and I think there's a little bit more room still for him. Like he's a guy that was not in the Power Five until that last year. So it's kind of a different program there. And then I think once you get to the pro side, especially, you're going to get on a little bit of a different weight regiment and things like that. And he does have room in that frame to continue to fill out. But the field to hit and the athleticism is there. And that's the thing that kind of, ours a little bit more of like a muscle hamster and a little stiffer. And that's what he's missing. I think there's some fluidity to Ledbetter that makes him fun. And also I think he can get into a pull side.
Give me 2 other active minor leaguers that went to Samford. Go.
Active minor leaguers?
Yes.
Anthony Morine,
Mm-hmm.
friend of the show, in the Angels org. And then the other is Sonny DeShera.
Bingo.
Yeah. That was a good trivia question.
Yeah, there you go.
Man, Sonny DeShera, the next breakout. No, I wish. I wish. I genuinely do wish. Last guy. This is a borderline breakout guy, but this is more just someone I just want to like stamp and put on radars because I think he's so fun and he's good. Saw him in the Arizona Fall League. Caleb Durbin, Yankee system. It probably doesn't qualify as a breakout compared to these other guys because he's 24 and he's already played, most of the levels and played in the Arizona Fall League. I just think he's going to break out because people are going to take him seriously. And this is a guy that no one was really going to take seriously prior. He's 5'7". He's pretty compact, and he's probably going to play second base for the most part. But dude, this guy rakes. Like the bat to ball, it's a borderline like plus hit tool. He walks at a good clip. If you combine the Arizona Fall League and just the regular season last year, he walked 41 times, struck out 26. There's enough impact there too for a guy that is so good bat to ball wise that I think he could be an everyday big leaguer. Like I actually think he's good. So Durbin, wow. I know that he's not gonna be a breakout guy, and he had a pretty darn good year last year, so it doesn't really count. But I just wanted to like stamp Caleb Durbin as a guy that I think is a legitimate prospect and a good baseball player that could potentially be an everyday big leaguer.
Did you see him play for the Fort Lauderdale Knights in the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League in 2020?
No way. That's really funny.
And then he was a Fond du Lac Dock Spider. All right, another trivia. He spent 22 with Atlanta. Do you know who he was the return for to the Yankees?
Spent 22 in Atlanta?
Yeah, with the Braves organization. He was in Augusta and Rome.
The lefty reliever with Lucas Letke.
Yeah, Litke. Good job. Wow. You're killing.
I'm on it today, man. Honestly, I did not think that was crazy.
That 3 o'clock coffee you had. That's why you're
on. Because the first episode after we finished, because we did 2 in one day today for those who are watching on YouTube probably noticed that we're wearing the same thing. But after the first one, I was like, dude, I felt like I wasn't as sharp as usual. I wasn't happy with how that went for me. But yeah, I think the coffee just kind of kicked me in gear, and now we're passing the trivia.
You're back sharp. Yeah, he is. Stolen bases are a huge part of his game. He really is a fire hydrant. Like we say fire hydrant for a lot of short, stocky guys, but like he doesn't have much of a neck. And I'm sure he would tell you that he doesn't have much of a neck, but he's like your classic muscular guy that moves really well and hits the ball surprisingly hard. And he had a good spring breakout game. I don't think he went yard, but I think it was like a 2-hit day with a double or something like that.
And he got run in spring training. He 41 plate appearances in spring training. He hit 343.
Legit.
Like, and he slugged. Durbin, take him seriously. Yeah. Pay attention.
And we love our D3 guys. Wash U in St. Louis.
He was Wash U in St. Louis?
Yes.
I didn't know that part. Oh, yes. That's awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know that. Oh, that's great. I absolutely love that.